I saw it when I was a kid, and it actually stayed with me as if it was a nightmare, because I remember some images isolated, but I didn't remember what the movie was about because I was very young, and I just remember being horrified, and it stayed for me. Nightmares are in black and white, so that stayed. But what I thought, what is curious is I didn't know the story behind, and again in my early youth I read I Am Legend, and I thought, oh, this reminds me of Night of the Living Dead. But you were inspired by it, or?
I was inspired by. I read I Am Legend, and I thought, wow. But I said this starts when it's over.
Yes.
And I'd like to see what happens in the beginning.
Yes.
And do something, from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, because everything that has happened with Night of the Living Dead has been incredibly fortunate for me.
Yes.
But I never wanted it to be a racial movie.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought of it as a racial movie. Did you have any feelings when you first saw it that it was about race?
Well, in Mexico, we, especially in me growing up, we had a very different upbringing, because it was I'm a mestizo. I'm half Spanish, half Indian. We don't have that conception of until you are older. You get that notion of the world. Yeah. But what struck me was the ferocity of it. It was really a very fierce film, because and what struck me is that the hero died, for sure. But I think that I think we create movies, and then 50% is what we want to say, and 50% is what we say without knowing. I really believe that.
I think that's actually true, because I certainly was not saying some of those things.
Yeah.
But
they were in the air, no?
In fact, the hero, you call him the hero because obviously he's the guy you're rooting for all the way, except he's wrong.
Yes.
He is wrong. In the end, he's wrong.
But he's hero because he's the smartest guy in the room. I mean, everybody talks about diversity now, and you think about Night of the Living Dead, and you have a charismatic, super smart, super wrong. He's a leading man, let's say.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, that's a better description, isn't it? But you gave birth. I think it's uncanny, because I don't think it is often that you can trace the birth of an entire genre to a filmmaker. I mean, the fact that when I argue about The Strain, for example, I tell them, of course, all vampire films that are a plague are like zombies, because zombies are like vampires because of the birth. But you birthed an entire modern genre entirely by yourself with that movie.
I had no idea. You know how it is. You just don't even think that way at all. You come up with an idea and you say, okay, bada bing, bada bing, bada bing, and then people read what they want to read into it, and that's it. I mean, I still to this day, I mean, I remember, I don't know, other Carnival of Souls, and I remember other films
for sure.
that came first, or that came around the
around
same
that time.
And so I say, why me? But listen, I love the idea that I'm credited with this, but I don't think that I really deserve all that.
You do. Sadly, you don't admit it, but you do.
Okay.
I tell you right now, you deserve the credit. You created it, and I think that you gave voice to an entire the anxiety that was in the air, for sure. Whether you did it consciously or not, you were responding. Obviously, you were a left-leaning man, right? And you were a young, wild bohemian. So you were rebelling against the man in a natural way, and you've always have. I mean, after death, all your movies are completely progressive politically. They all are.
Well, what was happening at the time was that there was all this racial tension and we never thought that our film was about race in any way, even though I knew that Dwayne was a African American, and I knew that this was maybe going to make some waves here and there, but I never
Calculated.
I never calculated that, and literally that we had the answer print, the first answer print of the film. We were driving to New York to show it to people who maybe would distribute it, and that night in the car with the first print in the trunk, we heard that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. So now all of a sudden, it became a racial film.
Yeah.
Nothing that we intended. I mean, it was just all of a sudden, magic. It was one of those things. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like we were talking earlier. It's like the China syndrome. You make this little movie, and all of a sudden,
3 Mile Island.
3 Mile Island, and so it was like that. So,
Now, let me ask you though, and the answer may not fit the theory, but casting to this day, casting is always contentious in any movie, big, small, whatever. I imagine it was quite laid back that you said, well, I want Dwayne to be the hero, the leading man, whatever, or did it take any convincing to any of the partners?
It did, except not very much convincing, because when a friend of mine, Jack Russo, and I wrote the script together, and we thought of him all the time. And if you read the original scripts, there's no description of the guy as far as his color. And he's a truck driver, and that's it. And in fact, he's written as kind of a gruff, not good grammar, so Dwayne was the best actor from among our friends, and Dwayne basically auditioned, and I said, wow, I mean, this guy's much better than anybody that we've seen, and so forget about it, he gets it. And that was it. And all he did was change. He wanted the dialogue to be not so gruff. He wanted it to sound a little more
sophisticated,
gracious, and that's all he did. It's like it's like the script set when he reaches for the phone. The script says, "I guess you tried this," and he read it like, "I suppose you tried this," and so he made all these little changes to try to make him seem less, try to make the character seem less rough around the edges.
What is great is that he also brings a lot of poise and a lot of gravity and a lot of command. I mean, he truly is an exceptional leading man. I mean, wrong as he may be, because he makes decisions that he seems to have thought out, and I think that's why it hurts so much when he dies. For me, as a young kid, it was one of the biggest shocks I've ever gotten in a movie. But to a visceral degree, I just said it cannot be. I felt sort of the ending is so apocalyptic, probably at that level, because everybody that you rooted for is dead.
Yeah.
And now here's the last bastion of decency, you may say, and because I find very, very purposely you make the guys doing the hunt rough.
Oh yeah, they're cowboys. They're completely rednecks. Yeah.
And I think that's where I think you've always had. I mean, we know that directing is managing choices, whether your choices or the weather or the budget, right, or whatever, or the producer but you manage. And when you manage, you imprint who you are and your essence, and you've always been have an anarchic streak in you, and the natural choice would be to make the army the savior, to make to balance the characters different. So that runs through your movies, through all the Dead movies and every other movie. You see Martin, and when you see Martin, you make the vampire the good guy, right? And the church, or the power of the church, is
good guy.
Well, a little bit of blood
I
drinking.
like to sort of thread that
very narrow.
Thread that line, and I think it is a narrow line. It's always a narrow line, even out on the streets, right?
Yes,
it's like, is this guy a bad guy, or is he just? Anyway, I prefer. I don't know. It's hard for me to write white hats and black hats.
Yes.
Because I see a lot of the white hats that I've known are not necessarily white hats.
Yes.
And a lot of the black hats that I've known are not necessarily black hats.
And probably the only movie where it's stated in a much more dichotomy is Night Riders, in a strange way, right? I mean, where you definitely have a world that deals with idealism.
I'm
and
so flattered that you know all this stuff.
I know all that stuff. I live that stuff. But Night Riders has that sort of a translation of the Arthurian ideals, no? But to a place that is...
Yes, but is he a good guy, or is he a
madman?
Yeah.
Is it Jim Jones with a bike?
Yes.
That's what you mean.
That's what I meant. And is that what he is, or is he really a good guy? I don't know. I mean, in the end...
You cast Ed Harris.
Oh.
That leans it one way, right? You cast me as the king. The whole movie wobbles.
Well, I don't know. Ed, see, at that time, Ed had only done one movie so far. Borderline, I think it was. It was something about the coyotes in.
Yes, for me it was the first time I saw him.
You saw Ed.
The first time.
Yeah, and that's all I had ever seen him in, and everybody was pitching him as if he was handsome, yet has its air of danger, and so
my wife found him handsome.
Okay.
I remember we were dating back then, and I every time he would show up in a movie, she would say, "Who's in the movie?" I said, "The King." And she'd go, "Let's go." And she never knew his name. I would just say, "The King."
You're
And
kidding.
No, absolutely.
Oh, man.
Oh, I'll go. But see, I think that's what I was saying. I think that there is part of your craft and part of your storytelling takes place in the dramaturgy of it all, right? The writing, the blah, blah, blah. But another instinctive one is in the casting. Dwayne or Ed Harris as the King is not Tom Savini as the King. Obviously, instinctively, you know that there's a more mischievous side, you know.
I knew the dark side of Tom.
Yes.
But, and it sort of, you could ignore the dark side of Ed, but no, I listen, I appreciate what you're saying there, but sometimes you don't have that choice. Sometimes it's not you making that choice.
But you have the choice of not making that choice. You have the choice of saying, screw this.
Well,
right?
Sometimes.
What I find interesting in all your filmography, and I think that, I mean, I knock on wood that I think I've seen everything, is that you always take a point of view that is unusual. You know, as we said, the vampire, when you do Martin, you have incredible leading parts for women, and whether
not in the first.
No, so not in the first film.
First film.
No, but eventually you do. And let's talk about There's Always Vanilla. How did you arrive to that movie as a follow-up, and exactly what was the process of it?
Well, you know, it's a very strange. We had a friend who was an actor. His name was Ray Lane, who actually plays the lead in There's Always Vanilla. And we shot a short film as an audition piece for him to go out and try to sell himself. And that was it. And my friend Rudy Ritchie, since passed, wrote a script, and he kept not delivering. And after Night of the Living Dead, we had money, not a lot of money, but people were giving us money, and we needed to finish the film. And so in the end, the script wasn't ready, and I wound up writing narration, dreaded narration, in order to sew it together. And that's really what that film is about.
So it started as a short. It started as a demo.
It started as a short film, an audition piece for the actor, for Ray. And, we decided to expand it into a feature. We thought it was the days of David and Lisa. And you could do...
Great movie, by the way.
Yeah. And that's what we aspired to do. And that was it, but it sort of never came around. And,
so you were looking for a verite, sort of everyday movie. But I think that the curious thing is you bring that sense of verite to the genre. You bring it to Night. You bring it to Martin. I mean, there's a lot of haphazard stuff. You do it very consciously on Martin when he's dreaming his vampire ideal reality, and then everything turns out to be disastrously everyday. I mean, he opens the door and the woman has cream on her face and so forth. So and you bring it. I can quote you a few instances in the movies. And you bring this sense of approaching a genre from the ground. You don't approach it from the lofty position of a genre. I mean, the grimy details on Night of the Living Dead, all of that. So I think you are you bring the verite into horror.
Well, I'm not quite sure I know how to respond. In the case of Martin, I knew in my head he's not a vampire. In my head he's a messed up kid.
Yeah.
And been influenced because he happens to have this fucked up grandfather who was, and he's just been warped into this. And I think the images the black and white images, I wanted the whole film to be in black and white. Now, I think it's better that there are color sequences.
Black and white.
Now, I mean, back then I was, and this is what you were talking about. These decisions that you make, or you think that it's your decision, but it's really not, because somebody says, I won't distribute it. I mean, I had when we shot Monkey Shines, I had, I thought I had a terrific ending for that movie.
Yes.
And, Mike Medavoice, who was head of the studio at the time, said, "Oh yeah, you want to use your ending? I'll open your movie in flight."
Wow.
And that, I mean, quote, bing. And
nice guy.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
And so, this is the stuff that I've run up against. When you say, you are now in a position where you can make decisions and have a certain kind of command, which I'm sure you didn't have initially.
Yeah.
Around the days of Kronos, or
yeah. Well, I had the lofty position of not having money, so there were no pressure because there was no money. No, but I think that there is some stuff you've done that still gives you that backbone. Setting the movies in Pittsburgh, I think that it's a recognizable reality. First of all, look. Richard Madison did this for the genre in literature. He brought the fantasy that up to a certain point, I would say at least until the end of the pulps, used to happen in castles or planets in a far, far away land,
right.
And he brought it to suburbia and to urban reality. All of a sudden, I Am Legend was happening in a city with everyday things that were recognizable. you could have shot in Pittsburgh regretting you were in Pittsburgh, trying to make it look like anywhere USA, but you embraced that even although they were genre movies.
Yeah, but you know what, man? It's where you are. So did Sam Raimi. I mean, it's like, so did John Waters. I mean,
I would agree on John Waters.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think I think that I've been in Prague shooting a movie, going emailed back and forth to the studio, them saying, "Can you make it look like New York?" And I go, "Why? It's Prague. Let's take advantage that it's Prague and enjoy Prague for Prague, right? Without also making the point, oh, it's Prague, but you can embrace. It's a decision, and I think you could have left for Hollywood. You could have done the same scale of budget in another place, making them. Hitchcock said, if it happens anywhere, it matters nowhere. You know, he said the place the story takes place in is as important to the narrative as the main character.
It is Mount Rushmore.
Well, Mount Rushmore, or if you make Vertigo an anonymous city anywhere in the U.S., you know, which is what I tell you, the decision is made every time with Euro co-productions in the 80s, in the 70s, where you see Europe and it's passing for anywhere in the world,
right.
and it doesn't have the same flavor. So I think that there is an idiosyncrasy to your stuff that comes from there.
Well, you know, thank you for saying that, but you know what? It's. I think there was just so much garbage out there when I was, you know, first sort of watching films, and there was garbage. I mean, it was all exactly what you were talking about. The sci-fi films were cheaply made and you know, exploitive, and the romance films were 3 coins in a fountain. You know, it was just so obvious. It was just
fabrications.
Yeah, and I don't know. It was very easy to say, "Well, I'm not going to do that."
Easy for you, morally. Or artistically.
Well, easy for me, and you know why? And exactly, you said something earlier. I had the blessing of no money.
Exactly.
And I was able, and eventually I found a guy, Salah Hassanan, who financed, after we had no distribution for Dawn in the U.S. And so we wound up having to, what we did actually, my ex-partner, Richard Rubenstein, said, we'll set up a screening, one screening. Took a 1-inch ad in the New York Times, Dawn of the Dead, sequel to Night of the Living Dead. Bing, and an audience showed up that absolutely packed the theater. And distributors came, and one of these guys was Salah Hassanan, who said he wanted to distribute, did distribute the film, left it unrated, which was terrific, which I think it helps in the end. And that was it. And then he gave us, and you never get this. I'm a young filmmaker. You never get this. The guy said, I'll give you a 3-picture deal out of the blue.
Amazing.
And so I said, okay, as long as one of them is another Dead film. And so, and the other 2 then were Creepshow and Night Riders. And I would never have made Creepshow or Night Riders except for that guy.
Wow. And I think that you created a second involuntary genre, which was the Italian zombie movie.
Well, I didn't create that. Some other guys did.
Yeah, but
Fulci.
But that led to the connection with Argento in a way, right?
Sorry?
Is that what led to the connection with Argento for Dawn?
No, Argento came first.
Oh.
Argento came first. Guillermo, for years, 10 years, everybody had been bugging me to make a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. And I said, I didn't want to do it. And so I socially knew these guys that developed this shopping mall, the first shopping mall that anywhere in Western Pennsylvania, the first indoor shopping mall ever. And I said, they invited me out to look at it, and the trucks were just coming in, bringing in everything that you could ever want. And I said, this is really worth something, because I didn't want to do a sequel tonight unless I had something to say. And now I said, oh man, this is something to say.
Yes.
And I had already started to write a script, and Dario called me up out of the blue, completely out of the blue. Called me up, got the number from my agent, and he called me up and he said, George, you want to make another Night, Dead Moon. And I said, so happens I have an idea. And he said, he immediately sent me airline tickets. I flew to Rome, and I wrote that script in Rome, near the Piazza di Popolo.
Wow. As one does. but the beauty is that there is some ideas that you left unfinished in Dead and Night of the Living Dead that you grab onto for crazies, which I also adore, and which may be the real root of the strain for me. Is this idea of a massive movement to counter the. This is not me, by the way.
Yeah, I forget it.
You're just getting character. He's called Dario.
He's getting pissed. He's getting pissed.
He's a legend.
He's saying enough of this.
Yeah, he said, ask me a fucking question.
No, the idea that there is a whole organization pushing against the plague. There is some beautiful, crazy, no pun intended, images in the movie, and I think with Dead, you upscale the apocalypse, and then you show sort of very pointedly. Now that you told me the shopping mall, where it came from, but very pointedly you tackle the army, consumerism, blah blah blah, and I think. There's a beautiful existential idea there that is, we have everything, and we're not really alive unless we have adversity. Right? And that's the beauty of.
Well, I know the characters. All of a sudden, when they have everything, in that brief moment when they have it all, they're dead.
They're dead. Yes. And when they lose it all, they're alive. So that now. You may avoid responsibility during the entire interview, but those are absolutely anarchic choices, which are beautiful. Those are, regardless of how haphazard was it for you to stumble upon the shopping mall and so forth, to decide that's the arc of the characters, not the reverse, which is they end up getting to the mall. That's their Oz. The beautiful is they get there, they consume everything, they use everything, and then they go, there's nothing.
There's nothing.
Yeah, they're barren, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that about it. And then the explosion at the end detonates that, and they end up in a helicopter with almost no gas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like a Jean-Pierre Melville existential.
Really,
ending.
man.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's the only in the original script, I kept thinking of it the whole time we were making the film. I thought, this has got to be a sequel to Night. Therefore, everybody must die, and it has to end tragically. And only when we were shooting the film, we actually shot footage of Fran committing suicide in the helicopter, standing up into the helicopter blades, and
Oh wow!
we didn't shoot the effect, but we shot her
Getting up.
the footage, yeah, and that was what was in the script, and then I said to myself, wait a minute, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that the world is fucked. Doesn't mean that everybody needs to get fucked, you know. I mean, I can save a couple of people. The world will still be fucked over there on the left, and
They'll live.
they live. And so, and that was it. And I said, okay, well, maybe they don't have gas. So
Beautiful.
that was.
But that I mean, I love the idea of this. Again, this pulsion in Knight Riders. How does the king die? In the most mundane, against the most mundane object in the world. You know, is you have Arthur riding heroically.
I know. Finally,
Yes.
thinking of himself as the White Knight.
And what happens, George?
Oh, he gets clobbered by a truck. I mean, you know, he just is lost in his. He's lost in his dream, in everything that he ever wanted. He's lost in everything that he thought he had created. He's lost in that. He's lost in Wonderland, and loses sight of reality for a
And
moment.
the truck gets him.
Yeah.
But I venture, in a strange way, this is something you have lived. I mean, in your life as a filmmaker, like we all do, we are riding in our motorcycle and we run into the truck of distribution or the studio or something. I mean, but there is something quite personal for a filmmaker to decide on that fate, you know.
You know, I suppose there is, and I have to say that in all the films that I've made, it's my Knight Riders is my most personal film, and I think it's because of that. It's because of that, because I spent my life trying to convince people to join up with me. Let's do this. We can make a film. We can make a film right here in Pittsburgh. We can do this. We can, you know, that was my whole thing. And I know that some people came along because they were thinking, well, movies, cool, you know. And nobody had except for a couple of guys, Russ Striner and Jack. We were the only guys that had the real dream, had the dream in harness, and you know, so that movie grew out of that because it grew out of all the people that said no, all the people that said fuck you, all the people that said, you know, that's what that movie grew out of, and it grew out of also I had some problems with some of the guys, Jack and Russ, and you know they wanted to go into a different company. They wanted to set up their own company, and so I felt betrayed, and that also comes in.
That comes in the movie.
Comes into that film.
But the beauty is that you're saying every director is an aspiring Jim Jones. Ultimately, you have to convince a lot of people that the Kool-Aid is really good, right?
I know, but I would distribute Kool-Aid that was
beneficial. Yeah, no, but I think that is I think present in most of your movies. There is the clash between the genre and the reality, and you benefit from that because the mundane reality informs the outlandish elements of the film. I mean, even in Dawn, there's a mundane level to the shopping mall. Of course, there's a wish fulfillment. Everybody in the audience. I saw that movie the first time I saw it. Midnight screening at a mall.
Wouldn't this be great?
No, but we were in Orange County. We had gone to Disneyland, and the whole family was retiring. I looked up at the paper, said midnight screening, Dawn of the Dead. I say, I know what we're doing. My brother and I go into the screening. We come out into an empty shopping mall, and not only did it look creepy, which it did, but everything looked kind of tacky, and everything looked kind of mundane in a non-aspirational way, because you took us all the way through that journey. Okay, this is oh, we can have everything, joy, then we don't want that. I mean, I think there is a real beautiful spirit in that.
You know what, Guillermo? When I first went and saw that shopping, when I first went to visit, this guy proudly, the guy that I knew socially, proudly said, I'm developing this first indoor shopping mall in Western Pennsylvania. You got to come out and see it. The moment I saw it, and I'm telling you, the trucks were bringing in
Fantasyland.
Everything you could ever possibly, Americans could ever possibly want. And I said, what is this? I'm not a religious person, but I was reminded of Scripture. What does it benefit if you have everything in the fucking world and you lose your soul?
It was a Babylonian.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, it blew me away, and it's what gave me the idea, and that idea stuck, and I think that's what's in the film, basically, all the way through the film. It's like, this is ridiculous.
Now part of the way we understand the genre is a Judeo-Christian way of understanding the genre, and more pointedly than any other way is the vampire.
Great segue.
No. Thank you. But
I'm sorry.
And more than any other genre, the vampire genre uses it. And I think that one salient example on how you don't deal with these absolutes of good and evil in a spiritual way is in Martin, because if what you're saying is the essence of it, the grandfather's madness, religious madness, creates Martin, creates this aberration in him. And ultimately, the ending is tragic because it fulfills the fantasies of both characters. And religion is not seen as a saving grace in your movies.
Boy, I think that I put the I stomped on religion with the character that I played in that movie, which was a priest, who was just more interested in the sweet wine than in why he's there. And the exorcist, eventually this exorcist, who is this octogenarian guy who doesn't even know what he's doing, is just reading and it to me, that's what religion is.
Yes.
It's either rote, it's either something that somebody reads by rote, or it's misinterpreted. And anyway, I'm obviously I'm not a religious person at all. I was raised Catholic, and I lapsed the moment. I can remember the moment. I mean, I was my grandmother died, and I'm I don't know 7, 8 years old, and we all went to the funeral home, and we're walking home, and I said, because I had been taught, well, at least she's in heaven now. Oh no, I'm sorry. My uncle said, at least she's in heaven now. And I said, not necessarily, because I'd been taught that, if you committed a sin right at that wrong moment,
you went down.
You went down.
Yeah.
And I got whacked.
At an existential level.
Yeah. No, physically.
Oh.
I got whacked physically.
Your uncle.
All around, yeah. My dad, my uncles, everybody said, get out of here. And so it was that moment that I said, wait a minute, there's something wrong here.
But rarely the divine or the supernatural ever has a role in your movies. I love, for example, the priest, the brief appearance of the priest in Dawn.
In Dawn.
When he comes out and is such a compelling, tragic figure.
Yeah.
Is at the same time has huge authority, but he's lacking a leg,
Right.
literally. He doesn't have one leg
He's one leg to
to
stand on.
Yes. So there is a pathos to that, you know. And the religion in Martin is completely, how would you say, poisonous.
It is. I tried to do that. I mean, they were trying to practice. The altar is a TV that, you know, with a cloth draped over it, and that's just
But I think that you, if you have any faith, because at the end of the day, I think you're a filmmaker that struggles between hope and despair in all the movies, between the truck and the king riding the bike, basically. But if you have any faith, is in a few men, in a few people, and very pointedly female characters. You know, I think that in Dawn, one of the strongest, most centered characters is female. I think that you have very strong female characters, gay characters, and so forth in Night Riders. Really, quite beautifully, three-dimensionally portrayed. And in Day, you have probably my favorite female leading lady
Sarah.
you created, which is a fantastic character, a true humanist. And it seems to me that you always say against barbarism, there's always one person that stands to reason and for the good of others.
Yes, but you know, Sarah, for example, in Day, Sarah, the character Sarah, who survives through it and in the end could just have easily have been shot, just the way John Amplas is shot by Rhodes. I mean, you know, it's by the seat of her pants that she survives. I don't think that she does anything. In fact,
To merit?
not to merit. She merits everything. But a lot of us merit reward
And get shot.
and get shot.
Yes.
And
But you've done that.
yeah,
Again and again. It is hope that is the rare
That's
Romero
rare.
ending.
I know, but my God, you mean I left a ray of hope?
You did. You didn't look. You didn't look under the rug. There was possible salvation. No, but I think that nevertheless, you do have these characters that are not. There's such beautiful extremes in Day. It is probably in many ways the most addictive of the death movies for me. It's the one I rewatch most often, and there is beauty because is truly against the big institutions. Science is crazy, military power is crazy, so you can actually manage to humanize the zombie. You can actually manage to do Baba, which is an incredible creation, and you then say against the rock and the hard place of the military and the scientists are people that are trying to make a living and be decent, you know. So I think she's a tremendous heroine in that, because she goes toe to toe to one of your most extreme villains.
Oh, she does. Yeah,
Right? She doesn't
I know.
back.
I know, but so does the crazy guy. I mean,
Yes.
so does
Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah, Dr. Frankenstein
Yes.
stands up. He's the first one to
Yeah.
stand up. But, oh boy. Listen, I appreciate all of this analysis.
It's not analysis.
But
It's actually just the fact that you have a definite profile as a narrator. And there is no lack of merit for a man to express his beliefs through art, consciously or not. Every choice you make carries that anarchy to the last movie.
Well, you know what? Every choice you make when you have the position of being able to make the choice. And I know that you've been there. I mean, I know that you've been in positions where before, when you were what you are today, you know, when you're trying to make choices and you're arguing for something and it doesn't come out. But I think the most important thing that you said is when you say no. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can take credit for is that I said no. Often.
Yeah.
And that's it.
But
You
I
know,
think
because you
a
say, well,
director
this
is
is
that.
garbage, I'm not going to do that. And that's it.
And you, I mean, to me, you are, seriously, to me, and I've said this in interviews many times, growing up, my two formative figures were you and David Cronenberg. Because you were men that were working in a genre with principle. You and him are both men of principle, and both of you, to me, stand as guys that created a completely articulate, coherent world, artistically, politically, and I always thought these guys stick to their guns. And the most people think a director is this, a director is that. The most powerful weapon a director has is no. And you used it.
Yeah.
When the time came, you said no to many. It's not that many times that people say no to you.
Yes.
No, but I tell you, when they finish screwing. No, but no is a word that people in power use a lot and can't understand. They don't hear it enough. So when you stick it to the man, so to speak, through your narrative, growing up, you and Cronenberg were the salient examples of what I was hoping to do in the genre. And the first time I met you, it was like meeting the Pope.
Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh. We had dinner there, and I called you Pope for a while.
And you
I
were
think.
already, weren't you? You had drawings already. Was
Yes.
it for Hellboy?
It was for Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth and all that.
Yeah.
But what I think is important is that you guys have a body of work where you have never betrayed yourself, socially, artistically, politically, and you, as we said, the most powerful tool a director has is not just creation, but saying no to the evildoers of the world. And I think you have to give yourself credit for that, because not everyone remains pure at that level. And you've been always an inspiration.
Well, thank you.
I mean, I needed to say that before the sex.
Thank you.
That was the foreplay.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
the foreplay.
I
It's true.
have said no.
Yes. Yeah. Very important,
And
George.
so have you.
Yes, I have. And you can only say fuck it once
Yeah.
in every project.
Oh, you mean in certain company?
Yeah. No. I mean, you say fuck it 2 times, they don't believe you anymore. You know what I'm saying? You can only say I'm leaving or I won't do it.
Really? I thought they just
No.
put you on the blacklist. It
They
says
do.
the guy doesn't cooperate.
Yeah. Well, I was going to have that phone call in a few minutes. But you know, the other aspect that is interesting, I think, is the relationships between men and women in your movies are all interesting. They are relationships of power and intelligence, and they are often purely at a human level without a sexual element to them. You know, there is some beauty and equality between male characters and female characters in many of your movies, and that's another rarity in the genre, that you don't often resort to sex. When you do, it's really interesting. You know, namely, I think, other than the casual nudity in Night Riders or here and there, you know, there is a beautifully painful, sick, gorgeous, tragic, poetic sex scene in Monkey Shines, which is also a movie I love. So, how did you come to that? And it defines the character so well.
Well, in the case of Monkey Shines, I felt that I couldn't leave it alone. And I felt that I was, I don't know, I felt that, here's this guy without his limbs, and I just thought that it was a nice way for her to show her affection. And I also thought it turned out to be a particularly sexy scene, even without anything explicit. You just see reactions. And so that was one of the only, I think the only time that I expressly went for that. And other than that, I mean, I never thought of the characters in Night of the Living Dead as sexually having any potential.
They were purely human in that way.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that you're right. I mean, I think that that's, and maybe underneath somewhere, that's the way I'm thinking of it. I don't want that to interfere with the actual human relationship. But
and there is some nudity in Night Riders, but I don't think that's an energy. There is no sexuality, and that this is another thing where it was an eye opener for me on Martin. It's the first time I saw a vampire narrative where the sensuality of it was not really in play. It was a messy, sad exercise,
right.
Drinking the blood. That is seminal for me, for The Strain, Blade, Chronos, whatever you name it. That movie, it told me you can do that genre without having to have a suave man in a cape. So that is a very intentional withdrawal of that. Because I'm sure the distributors or certain partners of you were insisting to show them the money.
Well, yes, they were. There is a moment later in the film where, when he breaks into the suburban house.
Oh yeah, finally, yes.
And you finally see this. You see this woman jumping out of bed with a guy, and she's completely naked, full frontal nudity, and that was sort of my way of saying, what does this matter? This doesn't matter right now. She's in trouble, and I just thought it was the way to show that was exactly full frontal, and the rest not for any kind of
exploitation.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful image of the woman with the slit wrists,
right,
in the bathtub.
In the bathtub,
which is just so sad and so poetic,
Well, I know. I mean, it's the only sort of. I mean, Martin actually felt some sort of love, or some sort of felt something for this woman, and all of a sudden, bada bing, and then he gets blamed for that.
Yes, which is very, again, such a sense of tragic injustice in your films. Yeah. See, he gets hit by the truck for the crime he did. For the crime he didn't do.
Yeah.
It's like the postman rings twice. Always rings twice, because he gets destroyed by the one that he didn't kill.
Right.
But I think that is how inflexible the world is as an object for you. I mean, I truly, whether it's the military, science, the truck, they are immovable objects against which you're idealists. Because at the end of the day, Martin, as deranged as he is more of an idealist than Tatakura. He's doing it with a certain lofty ideal, whereas Tatakura is a repressive, horrible presence.
No, he is, and he's telling the truth all the way. I mean, there is no magic.
There is no magic.
And anyway, I know. But, Guillermo, thank you for noticing all these things, but...
and thank you for eventually accepting some of them.